If you've been doing IFS or parts work, or really any kind of emotional healing, and you keep hitting the same wall, if you've brought your full presence, your genuine attention, and nothing seems to shift, that might not be a failure of effort or method. It might be that what you're trying to heal isn't even a real part of you anymore. This is Amara Strand, and welcome back to my podcast. In today's episode, I want to show you how to recognize something I call a ghost protocol. It's not a wounded part. It's not a trauma fragment. It's an echo, an energetic leftover that keeps playing the same script long after the real part has healed. And every time you try to help it, soothe it, integrate it, talk to it, you're actually feeding it. So let's look at how to spot these ghosts, how to stop fueling them, and why the shift might be exactly what you need to stop spinning your wheels. So I'm going to start by telling you an actual ghost story. Years ago, I moved into this old house, and the previous owner, an elderly woman, had died in what became my bedroom. I didn't actually think about it much until, weird things started happening. I'd hear footsteps creaking along the wood floor at night. Objects in the house would shift. She would show up from time to time and ask me questions, sometimes scold me about things, knock over art pieces she didn't like. She had opinions and was particularly disapproving of a nude sculpture I bought. My first assumption, she's still here. Her spirit's stuck, bound to the house, and she can't move on. Should I call someone? A shaman? A priest? Was this covered by my homeowner's policy? But then I started noticing something that didn't add up. She never went into parts of the house that had been renovated after she died. Nothing new seemed to register. I'd walk her through it. Look at this expanded garden, or what do you think of this sunroom? And she had no idea what I was talking about. She couldn't see any of it. And that's when I realized she wasn't really there, not as a full consciousness. She was more like a loop or a leftover. What I'd been interacting with was just an energetic imprint, like a recording that still had some charge. And once I saw that, everything changed. I didn't need to help her move on. She wasn't stuck. She wasn't suffering. She wasn't even really present. She was just a ghost protocol. And this is exactly what happens with some of our internal patterns. They seem alive. They seem like they need healing, but they're not. They're not even conscious. They're just running a script over and over. And we keep trying to help them, hold them, understand them, but they're not actually in the room with us. They can't respond. They can't change because they're not alive anymore. They're energetic residue that needs to be cleared. Now, if you're familiar with IFS, internal family systems, you know it's very popular. It's a therapeutic approach developed by Richard Schwartz, and it recognizes that we all have these different sub-personalities or parts. And when people can access what IFS calls self-leadership, these parts can heal and integrate. And many people I've known find this work transformative, and some of it resonates with what I've discovered through my consciousness work. But here's where it gets interesting and where I think we need to add another layer of understanding. Now, I'm not an IFS therapist. I work with energy dynamics and consciousness, but I have observed that sometimes people will be working with what feels like a wounded part, and it just doesn't respond in the normal way. They try to bring genuine presence to it. They try to understand what it needs. They do all the therapeutic approaches that they've learned, but it's like talking to a broken record. I see this sometimes with people who've been in some form of parts work or therapy for a while, working on the same issue, and they feel perplexed and defeated when they tell me, I thought I'd healed this pattern, but here it is again. And they start to think something's wrong with them, that they're unhealable, that they're not doing the work right, that they need more therapy, deeper therapy, different therapy. But what if the issue isn't that you need more healing? What if you're trying to heal something that's not actually there anymore? Let's break this down in a way that's really tangible. All of us have these things I call receptors, energetic patterns formed by old wounds, beliefs, and repeated emotionally charged experiences. You can think of them as these little emotional landing pads. And when something familiar comes flying in that fits that receptor, it lands and connects into your energy body. Now, what's landing is what I call a hook. And when that hook finds its matching receptor, you're off to the races. Suddenly, you're not responding to what just happened. You're back inside an emotional state that feels way older than the current moment. You feel like a hurt kid or an angry teenager, and that's the receptor hook combo at work. It's like energetic chemistry. And here's the critical distinction. Sometimes this lights up a real part, a part of you that is still active, still wounded, still trying to get a need met. Those are the parts that benefit from therapeutic attention. They respond, they shift, they evolve. But other times, that original part is already healed. You did the work, you processed it, and it integrated. But the receptor pattern, that scar, is still there. And when a hook touches that scar, it activates what I call a ghost, a looping playback of how you used to feel. It's not alive. It's not interested in healing. It's not part of your living system anymore. It just plays the tape. And if you're not aware of this, you end up doing therapy on a recording, bringing compassion and curiosity and maybe a bit of frustration to something that can't respond because it's not real anymore. That's what makes this so sticky, and why you can end up stuck in healing loops that don't go anywhere. So how do you tell the difference between a real part and a ghost? First, look for responsiveness. A real part is alive. It can learn, it can evolve, it responds to new information. When people bring genuine attention and curiosity to it, real authentic attention, something shifts. It might not happen overnight, although I've seen that too, but you can feel there's something real there to work with. A real part has needs that make sense. It formed for good reasons. It's trying to protect something or get something met, and when someone understands what it's really trying to do, they can work with it. In past podcast episodes, I've featured actual examples from my audience and deconstructed them step by step. These are worth listening to if you want to see this process in action. But a ghost just replays the same limited script. It's frozen in time. It can't see your growth. It can't recognize who you are now. It can't adapt to new circumstances. Just like the ghost in my house who couldn't see the new rooms. A ghost doesn't have real needs or a real path of growth and resolution. It just has programming. Another clue to look for: timing and specificity. If a pattern only shows up in one kind of situation or only with one particular person, start asking why that is. Does this come up with everyone or just when your father calls? Real patterns tend to generalize. Ghosts are often linked to very narrow triggers. And here's what you need to be aware of. If someone tries to do ongoing therapeutic work with a ghost, they actually feed it energy. They make it more solid, more convincing. People can literally spend a lot of energy trying to heal something that isn't there. Let me give you an example of how this plays out. I worked with someone who had a really good relationship with her sense of worth and competence in most areas of her life. She'd done years of therapy, had a successful career, healthy friendships, but whenever she talked to her mother, she would get triggered into feeling like an incompetent failure. Her mother had this way of asking innocent-sounding questions that were actually loaded with criticism. Oh, are you still renting that little apartment? How's your diet going? Did you ever follow up on that client lead I sent you? And boom, suddenly this accomplished woman would feel like she was 12 years old and couldn't do anything right. The key thing here is that this feeling of incompetence only showed up with her mother. In every other context, she felt confident and capable. But because the experience with her mother felt so real, so viscerally familiar, she kept thinking, I must still have unresolved issues with self-worth. I need to work on this more. But actually what was happening was more complex and less conscious than simple criticism. Her mother wasn't trying to make her feel incompetent per se. She was unconsciously trying to trigger her daughter back into the energetic identity of that uncertain 12-year-old who was still under her mother's shadow. You see, her mother didn't know how to relate to her as an accomplished adult. She didn't know how to be the mother of a successful, independent woman. So unconsciously, she kept trying to squeeze her daughter back into the familiar contours of childhood, where she knew her role and felt needed and relevant. Her mother's hooks were hitting an old receptor scar from childhood and activating the ghost of her former wounded part. The original wound around feeling not good enough had actually been healed through her therapy work. But the receptor pattern was still there, and her mother's unconscious need to relate to a child kept activating it. The solution wasn't more therapy about self-worth. The solution was recognizing that this was energetic interference, not authentic, unhealed material. The daughter wasn't regressing into her actual insecure 12-year-old child part. She was reflexively assuming a ghost identity, an empty shell, stepping into the energetic imprint of who she used to be. So the real issue here is that the mother needs to change the shape of her daughter energetically in order to engage with her. The real work here is not in healing the daughter's insecure 12-year-old self. It's in getting her to realize clearly what's happening and see her mother's emotional limitations. Her mother is saying, I don't know who I am in relation to a successful adult daughter. Please shapeshift back into this identity, this old pattern, this shape, so that I can feel safe. Now we know what's going on. Now the daughter can remove that residual receptor, clear the ghost pattern, and then start the real work, which is dealing with the reality of her mother's emotional limitations. Now she's putting her energy where it can actually do something, have some effect, instead of spinning her wheels trying to fix herself. So how do you recognize when you're dealing with a ghost instead of real unresolved material? First, pay attention to the quality of the experience. Does this feel like it's responding to who you are now, or does it feel truly frozen in time? A real part will recognize growth. It might still be scared or hurt or defensive, but it can see that the person isn't the same as when it got wounded. It can take in new information. A ghost operates as if no time has passed, as if the person hasn't grown or changed at all. It's limited to the exact same script. Second, notice the specificity of triggers. If this pattern only gets activated by certain people or in very specific circumstances, while you feel fine in similar but different situations, that's often a sign you're dealing with a ghost rather than unhealed material. And lastly, pay attention to whether therapeutic work actually helps. If working with this pattern therapeutically actually seems to make it more substantial rather than healing it, you might be feeding a ghost rather than healing a real part. Real parts respond to good therapeutic work. They might take time, but they evolve. Ghosts just absorb therapeutic attention and keep playing the same loop. This gets really tricky in relationships because we're told that intimate relationships are supposed to bring up our stuff for healing. And I'm sure all of us have found this to be true. But sometimes what's happening is that your partner has figured out exactly which hooks get you activated, and they're using them, maybe unconsciously, to get their needs met or to avoid dealing with their own issues. And you think you're being triggered into your unhealed material. So you're trying to take responsibility for your action, work on yourself, communicate better. Meanwhile, your partner is just continuing to hook you because it works. And this isn't about blame. Most people don't know what they're doing. They don't know they're doing this. They're just running their own unconscious programs. But the effect is the same, whether they know what they're doing or not. You're getting hooked and you're thinking it's your stuff to deal with. What makes this even more complex is that these ghost patterns can become part of your identity within the relationship. I'm the sensitive one. I'm the one with trust issues. I always overreact. This identity formation around the ghost pattern gives it even more substance and makes it feel more real. The solution is learning to recognize when you're being hooked, clearing those old receptor patterns so you can't be hooked in the same way, and sometimes also setting energetic boundaries or even ending relationships that are built on this kind of dynamic. Here's why this distinction is so important. Your energy and attention are precious resources. When you spend years trying to heal something that's actually energetic debris, you're not available for the growth and experiences that are actually waiting for you. You get stuck in this maintenance mode, constantly managing a ghost pattern instead of moving forward into new territory. And these patterns get fed by your attention, your concern, your therapeutic focus, and sometimes by the intentional, energetic interference of people close to you. They become more solid, more convincing, more central to your identity. In my own work, I've discovered that some of what we think of as unresolved parts are actually fragments of ourselves that we've left trapped in other people's stories. The stories of our parents, how they saw us, their feelings about parenthood. We've ensouled these story worlds with our energy, and they become like fragment dimensions rather than just memories. The real you, the one that is always available to grow and create and experience new things, gets relegated to the background while you're busy trying to fix things that need to be cleared or retrieved rather than healed. So what do you do when you recognize that you're dealing with a ghost instead of real unhealed material? First, stop feeding it. When you're in fix-it mode, you access a particularly potent kind of energy, which is very useful when there is something to fix. But when there isn't, you end up delivering highly condensed energy to a ghost. Stop trying to understand it, heal it, work with it. Recognize it for what it is, energetic debris. Second, you need to address the underlying pattern. In my work, I found that sometimes what we think are our own wounded parts are actually fragments we've left trapped in other people's stories about us. And when you retrieve those soul fragments, bring those child selves home from the shadow realm of old story worlds, the residual receptor patterns often dissolve naturally. Third, you need to clear the old receptor pattern that's allowing the ghost to be activated. This is where understanding energy management becomes crucial because you can't think your way out of an energetic pattern. You have to work with it energetically. And lastly, when someone tries to hook you and activate the ghost, you need to recognize what's happening in real time and refuse to engage, not with anger or drama, just with clear recognition and boundaries. This is not mine. This is not real. I'm not available for this dynamic. And this takes practice. These patterns can be deeply grooved, but once you start to see the difference between what's authentically yours and what's just old programming being activated by other people's energy, everything changes. Now, let's be clear, this doesn't mean everything is a ghost. Plenty of what comes up in your emotional life is real. Real parts, real needs, real opportunities for integration. The difference is that real parts are alive. They have real needs, real wisdom to offer, and at their core, they have a purpose. So work with those parts. Let them teach what they know and let them learn from you and evolve. This is about discernment, about not wasting your life force trying to repair something that's already been resolved. So where do you start with this? Well, begin by paying attention to patterns. When do you get emotionally activated? By whom and in what circumstances? And start to question the assumption that every emotional reaction requires therapeutic attention. You know, we're so trained to look at every issue as though it is our own. And many of them are, for sure, but some of them aren't about us. We've got to stop wanting to be good therapy patients or adhere to some ideal of self-awareness and start developing true discernment and personal authority so we can tell the difference between what's ours and what isn't. Sometimes that ideal of being self-aware keeps you from being able to say, this is about you, not me. Sometimes the most healing thing you can do is recognize that what you are experiencing isn't real and use energetic techniques to clear it. This doesn't mean becoming emotionally shut down or dismissive of genuine feelings. It means developing the discernment to know the difference between what's yours, what's alive, and what's just energetic debris that requires housekeeping. Understanding this ghost protocol, it's just the beginning. Learning to relate without getting hooked and energetically corded. Learning to maintain your energetic sovereignty while still being open and connected. That's advanced work. But it's also incredibly freeing and rewarding. You become much more discerning about who you let into your field and what kind of energy exchanges you participate in. If you want to go deeper into how this works, how hooks find receptors, how cords can siphon your energy, take a look at the Hooks and Cords course. It goes into the mechanics of these patterns and gives you the tools to stop leaking energy into things that no longer serve you. Thanks for being here with me today, and we'll talk again soon.